All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Houston Rockets Daily. My name is Jackson. I post daily Rockets content, so be sure to hit that like button, hit that sub button if you enjoy it. All right, we have a tweet here from the Rockets Wire. Key Sixers players privately believe that James Harden may make Houston reunion a reality. The Athletics, Kelly Iko, and Sam Amick report. Um, That's interesting, man. It really is. We talked about this on the channel about a month ago when we saw, I know Kelly Oiko has been heavily involved in this, but, we talked about this about a month ago. And to be honest with you, I got a lot better reactions from Rockets fans than I was initially anticipating. Now, here's the thing. The Houston Rockets in the last 3 years have been one of the worst teams in NBA history. All right, we actually might be the worst 3 year. It might be the worst 3 years in NBA history. I don't have the fact check on that, and obviously the season is still going on, so that's just up in the air. You're telling me people don't want a Hall of Famer when you have 13 wins. You're telling me a Hall of Famer who is still giving you insane statistics on his current team, the Philadelphia 76ers. You're telling me he wants to join a team where Steven Silas has like a 24% win percentage. All right. To me, the answer is a clear yes. Now, we all have our opinions, and that's what makes this so fun. But if James Harden actually wants to come to Houston, I will accept him with open arms any day of the week. Now, you got to keep in mind when we're talking about James Harden, there's a couple of things that it boils down to. It's like, all right, if we're talking fan wise, do you want a guy who demanded a trade from your team and like kind of went out of his way to get out of Houston? On the other side, do you want an aging veteran who isn't cheap? Is that really the Houston Rockets' best choice? Well, James Harden has completely changed his game. I don't have to tell you guys that. By the time, if he declines his player option, we'll talk about that in just 1 second. If he declines his player option and becomes a free agent, he's going to go to Houston. That's the way I see it. He'd be 34. All right. He turns 34 in the month of August. Now, I get that that is extremely skeptical. Um, I don't think James Harden can be the best player on a team at this point in his career. All right. But on the season, he's averaging 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 10.5 assists on 45% from the field and 40% from downtown, along with 87% from the free throw line. Every statistic I just mentioned, except for the points, are higher than his career average. All right. He has completely changed his game, and he is still playing like one of the best players in the NBA, and it's being overlooked. I'm not quite sure why. Now, my take, real quick, on Philadelphia is this: James Harden, Joel Embiid is an interesting duo, 100%. Milwaukee and Boston are really talented teams. I think Philadelphia will advance past the first round if the season ended today and we got into the playoffs. Philadelphia, I would think they would clear their first round matchup, but come second round, when you have to play whoever the 2 seed is, if they have the 3 seed like they do right now, well, the issue is the 2 seed is Boston. All right. I don't think, regardless of this report, regardless of what Sixers players are thinking, which by the way is not good, you don't want like your current team to have rumblings of like, oh yeah, he's gone. If he's gone regardless. But if the Sixers win a championship, that's probably the only reason that this team stays afloat. If you are running a business and you are the owner or the coach, even if you're Doc Rivers or what have you, and you take a look at this Philadelphia 76ers team and you lose in the second round of the playoffs to Boston, what is your initial reaction? Well, my initial reaction, and this hasn't even happened yet, is this isn't a championship team. All right. They're just not a championship team. I don't know who their third guy is. It's probably Tobias Harris. Tobias is aging, and it's not the same reliable Tobias Harris that we've seen in previous seasons. And also, if Tobias Harris is your third option, no disrespect to the guy, but like there are probably going to be teams that can beat you. At the very least, there's going to be teams that can beat you. And two to just name off of the dome are going to be Boston and Milwaukee. All right. And it doesn't have anything to do necessarily with like, oh, who's, we're third option versus third option. It's not necessarily that. It's just the way the Philadelphia 76ers are constructed is it seems like you're throwing a lot of shit at the wall and hoping it sticks outside of James Harden and Joel Embiid. I know both of those two players like require the ball to be in their hands a lot, but when you really break it down, the roster isn't necessarily championship and the clock is ticking as far as, man, we have kind of had the same issue for several seasons now. We need to figure something out. So if they're like, all right, this isn't working, I don't know. I would imagine Joel Embiid doesn't get traded. I've seen some rumblings about that happening. I don't think that happens quite this offseason, but basically my point is I don't think Phoenix is a better team, or I don't think Philadelphia is a better team next year than they are right now. And I wouldn't be surprised in any world if James Harden leaves, regardless of an affiliation to the Houston Rockets or a potential return to Houston. I think when it's not really an if to me, that's how like firm I am in this opinion. When Philadelphia loses in the second round of the playoffs, James Harden is out of there. And I think that is in his best interest, even outside of, like I said, the Houston Rockets affiliation. Um, a couple of things are going to matter. Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, a lot of the Spurs players, you're not going to see them play a lot in the second half of the season. San Antonio, currently at the time of this recording, is coming off back-to-back wins, and Houston has about a 2-game lead over them right now. That's a huge issue because San Antonio really isn't that bad. They have a interesting roster. I know they traded away Jakob Poeltl, so it's not like they're gonna like be over 500 for the last half of the season. That's not quite what I'm saying here, but they're gonna sneak in wins. Well, the thing is, with a healthy Jalen Green, a healthy Kevin Porter Jr., so is Houston. So now it becomes the battle for the 1 seed. And that's where the James Harden situation gets interesting because it's like, all right, let's say for just, conversation arguments, let's say San Antonio, regardless of even the record, let's just say San Antonio gets the 1 seed, or, even Detroit or Charlotte or whatever gets the 1 seed, the first pick, not seed, sorry, and Houston gets number 2, and Houston is set in drafting Scoot Henderson. That's where things get a little complicated because you don't want Scoot Henderson coming off of the bench. You don't want Jalen Green coming off of the bench. And I'll tell you for damn sure James Harden isn't coming off the bench. So Scoot Henderson getting drafted might make things a little bit more complicated. I still think they'd figure out a way. I really have a hard time imagining Scoot Henderson would come off of the bench and they sign James Harden. I don't really think that happens. Regardless, as the time is going by, I think Kevin Porter Jr.'s time as a Houston Rocket is completely over. I really do, unless he's willing to accept a bench role. Um, no disrespect to Kevin. He's having a phenomenal year. I don't think he makes the Rockets better in the long term. I don't think he is the point guard we're quite looking for. I would much rather go Scoot Henderson or James Harden and just see what happens with that because that gives Houston the best option to win. We don't have our draft pick next year, so the Rockets are going to have to figure their shit out in this offseason and in this draft. Like, there's no more time to like coddle these players and be like, all right, Kevin, and it's not Kevin's fault in any way, shape, or form. The Rockets roster is going to look completely different next year than it does right now. I'm just saying this team is going to have to make decisions that they don't want to make, that the fans don't want them to make, and players are going to get cut loose. All right. Maybe Kevin goes to the bench. Maybe the Rockets don't get Scoot. Maybe they don't get Harden and they get Vic or they get Thompson or whatever the case may be, Brandon Miller. And, Kevin's our starting point guard next year. But if I had to gamble on it, I don't think that's going to happen. But I will say the drafting of Scoot Henderson makes the whole guard situation, a James Harden return, a lot more interesting. At the same time, if you draft Victor Wembanyama, James Harden or no James Harden, that makes Alperen Şengün very interesting because it's like, oh, interesting. It just makes it interesting. I'm not going to sit here and critique Alperen Şengün's defense because you gave up 2 first-round picks to acquire this guy. He's not good on defense. Maybe sometimes he's average. But if we're just calling it a buck, if we're keeping it a buck and calling a spade, Alperen Şengün right now, and that's the thing is he's extremely young. Same thing with Kevin Porter Jr. It's not good on defense. All right, that's just literally a fact. It's going to be an interesting offseason. All right, and it's a big reason why I'm not all that concerned about wins and losses right now. I'm solely focused on player development and player progression. I want whoever's on our roster right now to end this season as good as they possibly can. I want Kevin Porter Jr. to ball his ass off in the last 20 games. Jalen Green, ball his ass off. KJ Martin Jr., Tari Eason, Usman Garuba, Alperen Şengün, hell, Jay Sean Tate, ball out. Ty Washington Jr., ball out. Daisha Nix, ball out. Because those are good problems to have is like, oh, shit. Kevin just had a 20.5 rebounds, 6 assists season. What do we do with him now? It's a good problem to have. Oh, shit. We have the first pick in the draft. Victor Wembanyama is going to be a Houston Rocket. What do we do now? Good problem to have. So if we win, we win. If we lose, we lose. It's all good. It really is all good. This draft has sneakily became very deep and looking extremely promising. And that was not really the case at the start of the season. There was a lot more ambiguity in the air. I would love Victor Wembanyama. I would love Scoot Henderson. I would love Brandon Miller. I'd love a lot of these players on this Rockets team. A lot of these questions will be figured out once we get into the offseason, when the regular season is officially over. I'm not worried about it. What I will say, though, is if James Harden actually wants to come to the Houston Rockets and there's an actually reasonable contract for both parties, I will open it. I will accept it with open arms. That's all I got to say with that. Curious to hear what you guys have to say. That's it for today. Quick little rant. We talked a little bit about free agency, draft, and James Harden. I was going to go live today, but couldn't find the time, so I figured at least get a video out because we keep seeing James Harden's name being floated out there with Rocket News. So like button, sub button, drop a comment.